Good evening, little dreamers. Welcome back to the Wise Owl, where stories flutter softly into your hearts. Tonight, I'll be telling you a tale filled with wonder, danger, friendship, and a girl with a heart as pure as snow. This is the story of Snow White and the 7 dwarfs. Ready? Let's begin. In a grand castle, high on a misty hill, lived a queen known for her beauty and her pride. Each day, she stood before a tall, enchanted mirror framed in gold and shadows. It shimmered with silent power. With a cold, confident voice, she asked the same question she always did. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all? The mirror glowed softly, and a voice echoed back, You, my queen, are fair, it's true. She smiled. But then the voice continued, But Snow White is fairer than you. The queen's face froze, her eyes darkened, her lips curled into a scowl. Snow White, she whispered, the young princess with skin like snow, lips like roses, and kindness in her heart. How dare she outshine me? The queen hissed, fury burned inside her. She turned away from the mirror with a swirl of her dark cloak, her mind already weaving a wicked plan. If Snow White was now the fairest, then Snow White must go. Far from the queen's chamber, Snow White wandered the castle gardens, unaware of the danger that crept so close. The queen had sent a huntsman, strong, silent, and loyal. He led Snow White deep into the forest under the excuse of a walk. But in his heart, he trembled. As they reached the shadows of the trees, he stopped. He drew his knife. Snow White turned to him, her eyes wide and innocent. There was no fear, only confusion. The huntsman froze. He could not do it. His hands shook. He dropped the knife. Run, he whispered. Run and don't look back. The queen wants you gone, but I won't let it happen. Snow White gasped and ran. She ran through thick trees and tangled roots, branches brushing her cheeks, tears mixing with the wind. Deeper and deeper she went, until the forest itself seemed to soften. There, hidden between ancient oaks, she saw it. A tiny cottage. Curious and exhausted, Snow White stepped inside. 7 tiny beds, 7 tiny chairs, and peace. For now, she was safe. As the sun set behind the treetops, Snow White curled up across the tiny beds inside the cottage, exhausted from her journey. The room was cozy and quiet, until the door creaked open. In stepped 7 little men each with a round face, twinkling eyes, and colorful clothes. They carried tiny pickaxes and lanterns, humming a cheerful tune. But when they saw Snow White, they froze. One with a long beard gasped, Who's been sleeping in our beds? Snow White sat up, startled. But she smiled warmly. Please don't be afraid, she said softly. I was lost in the forest. I didn't mean to intrude. The dwarfs looked at each other. They whispered. They scratched their heads. Then the jolliest one stepped forward with a grin. Well, he said, any friend of the forest is a friend of ours. They introduced themselves, each with a name that matched his nature. Happy, sleepy, grumpy, bashful, sneezy, dopey, and Doc. Snow White laughed with joy. For the first time in days, her heart felt light. The dwarfs offered her a place to stay, and just like that, a new family was born. Far away in her dark tower, the queen stared into her magic mirror once more. Mirror, mirror on the wall, she whispered. The mirror's reply struck like thunder. Snow White still lives, and still is the fairest of all. The queen's eyes blazed with fury. This time there would be no mercy. She brewed a powerful spell, mixing shadows, venom, and a single, perfect apple. Its skin gleamed bright red, but it was cursed. Disguised as a hunched old woman, she crept through the forest to the dwarf's cottage. Snow White was alone, singing sweetly as she swept the floor. Hello, dear child, croaked the old woman. Would you like a juicy apple? Snow White hesitated, but the apple looked so lovely, and the woman so harmless. She took a bite. Instantly her eyes fluttered, the broom slipped from her hands, she collapsed to the floor. The dwarfs returned moments later. They found her still and pale, the bitten apple beside her. They wept, for their dear friend had fallen into an enchanted sleep, and no one knew how to wake her. Days passed, then weeks. The dwarfs could not bear to bury Snow White, so they built a crystal coffin and placed it deep in the forest clearing, surrounded by flowers and soft candlelight. Animals gathered each day to sit near her. The forest grew silent in mourning. One day, a young prince, kind and noble, rode through the woods. He had heard stories of a maiden so beautiful and pure, and when he saw her, he knew. He stepped closer, his heart aching. "She looks like she's only sleeping," he whispered. Moved by sorrow and something deeper, he leaned down and gently kissed her forehead. A soft wind stirred the leaves, the birds began to sing. Then her eyes fluttered open. Snow White gasped. The curse had broken. The dwarfs danced with joy. The forest burst into color. The prince helped Snow White to her feet, and she smiled brighter than the sun. Together, they returned to the castle not in fear, but in celebration, and from that day forward, Snow White lived with love, laughter, and friends who never let her walk alone again. And so, dear little dreamers, Snow White found her happiness again not just through magic, but through kindness, courage, and the love of true friends. You see, even in the darkest forests, light finds a way to shine through. And when your heart is gentle and true like Snow White's, you'll always find someone who cares. The dwarfs showed us that even the smallest friends can protect us in big ways. And the prince reminded us that sometimes hope arrives when you least expect it. But most of all, this tale reminds us, jealousy only brings shadows, while kindness lights the way. Now close your eyes, little ones, and dream of enchanted forests, cozy cottages, and hearts full of love. Until next time, good night from the wise owl.